progress in conserving wild species, but today, much of it is at risk. Every year, we fall far short of the resources needed to conserve wildlife sustainably. This gap in wildlife conservation funding threatens not just plants and animals, but also the balance of life on Earth. Our own survival depends on wildlife just as much as their survival depends on us. This year, World Wildlife Day will explore innovative ways to finance wildlife conservation. New ideas are helping bridge the gap, from debt for nature swaps to conservation bonds and much more. But what are some other creative ways we can finance wildlife conservation to better invest in nature and our shared future? Join us as we explore what's working well, uncover untapped financial opportunities, and mobilize the right resources towards a resilient and harmonious future for people and planet.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, dear friends online, happy World Wildlife Day. What a pleasure to welcome you here and see such a big group of people joining us here in Geneva, which for the first time, I believe, we're celebrating World Wildlife Day in honor of the 50 years of that the convention has entered into force. And since Switzerland is our government depository and our host here, we decided at their also at their invitation to hold World Wildlife Day celebrations here today. So thank you so much for being here. I am Ivani Guerrero. I'm the Secretary General of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Plants and Animals. And we are here to welcome all of you to the celebration that we will have this morning. It is really a pleasure to welcome you to the Palais des Nations in Geneva. We have an annual celebration of animals and plants, which I think that we can all agree that are one of our planet's most valuable resources and gifts from the earth. As you may know, this year also marks, as I said, 50 years since the entry into force of CITES. For 5 decades, CITES has served as the global intergovernmental treaty for regulating the world's trade in wild plants and animals. Today, over 40,000 species are covered by CITES, and our 185 parties are working together towards the shared strategic vision for a world where all international trade in wildlife is legal, sustainable, and traceable. Our theme for this year is Wildlife Conservation Finance, Investing in People and Planet. And this reminds us that we are also here to celebrate the stewards of conservation and to continue to find ways to strengthen our support for their work on the front lines. Current financial flows are insufficient for governments to meet their national biodiversity targets, especially in low to middle income countries where the world's biodiversity hotspots are located. Though over 140 billion US dollars are invested annually in biodiversity conservation, this amount falls significantly short of the estimated 824 billion US dollars needed each year to adequately protect and restore nature. The Kunming-Montréal Global Biodiversity Framework has revitalized the global effort to take urgent action to halt and reverse biodiversity loss. Target 19 calls for the mobilization of financial flows of at least 200 billion US dollars for biodiversity. And Target 18 aims to phase out or reform harmful subsidies by at least 500 billion US dollars annually by 2030. At the same time, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for an SDG stimulus of at least 500 billion US dollars to significantly increase affordable, long-term financing for development, including for nature. There is good news, however, as at the resumed session of the 16th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity last week in Rome, parties agreed on a way forward in terms of resource mobilization, with a view to close the global biodiversity finance gap and mobilize at least $200 billion a year by 2030. Congratulations to the international community for this achievement, because investing in wildlife is not an aspiration, it is a necessity. It is our collective responsibility towards a resilient future for both people and the planet. Today, we are honored to welcome representatives of our parties, our partners, experts from around the world, young artists, filmmakers, students, a conservation technology network, and all of you here and online for a glimpse into the world of wildlife conservation finance. We want to understand what is working well and what we need to bridge the gap in wildlife conservation financing. We thank you for joining our exploration. Now, to get us started, I wish to invite our esteemed opening speakers to share their insights for investing in people and the planet. First, I welcome His Excellency Ambassador M. Losi Nkosi, Permanent Representative of South Africa to the United Nations and other organizations in Geneva. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Greetings, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, fellow panelists. It is indeed a great honor for me to be part of this high-level event to celebrate the UN World Wildlife Conservation Day. At the outset, allow me to extend my gratitude to you, SG, for convening this important commemoration under the theme of wildlife conservation finance, investing in people and planet. We've gathered here today to commemorate, but also importantly to share ideas about what to do to conserve wildlife, which forms an integral part of our ecosystem. On this important anniversary in the UN calendar, we are reminded of the proclamation of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wildlife, Fauna, and Flora, which came into existence 5 decades ago, as the SG correctly pointed out. Investing in wildlife has become an urgent matter beyond an aspiration. It has become a necessity, which requires collective responsibility for the future of both people and planet. Wildlife is an essential part of the Earth's intricate web of life. It sustains ecosystems, it regulates natural processes, and supports biodiversity. Wildlife provides essential services that support human livelihoods and contribute towards the achieving of the strategic vision of the Conservation on International Trade and Endangered Species of Wildlife, Fauna, and Flora CITES for 2030 and accelerate the goals and targets envisaged in the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Madam Moderator, SG, ladies and gentlemen, the UN Wildlife Day has and should continue to be an important platform to exchange ideas, showcase solutions, and advance conservation on how the planet should contribute towards the financing of biodiversity and lobby private sector stakeholders to invest in wildlife for its sustainability. As a country and as a people, South Africa has invested in the World Bank Conservation Bond, colloquially known as the Rhino Bond. This is a groundbreaking initiative supporting South Africa's efforts to conserve endangered species. The 5-year, $150 million Sustainable Development Bond includes a potential performance payment from the Global Environment Facility, the GEF, which will contribute to protecting and increasing black rhino population. The World Conservation Board is a first of its kind outcomes-based financial instrument that channels investments to achieve conservation outcomes measured in this case by an increase in black rhino populations. Rhinos are considered an umbrella species that play an important role in shaping ecosystems on which countless other species depend. Through the World Conservation Bond, investors are supporting the financing of activities to protect and grow a critically endangered species with clear conservation targets, contributing directly to biodiversity and employment in conservation-related sectors in rural and underserved regions of South Africa. The Rhino Bond is indeed a groundbreaking approach which has enabled private sector investment in global public goods, in this case, biodiversity conservation, a key global development challenge. Whilst investing in biodiversity is critical, the same should be said about the management and protection of biodiversity, rural areas, and communities who benefit from economic opportunities created by tourism. With tourism, communities also get a chance to showcase their culture, their food, and their way of living. Efforts to build and promote a sustainable biodiversity economy must be underpinned by the active participation of local communities. This means the needs and rights of local communities and indigenous peoples must also be protected to correct the perception that the value of nature or animals is elevated above that of the human being. Striking the right balance between communities' developmental needs and the biodiversity economy can advance the development of rural areas and jobs. At the center of this balance is the importance of sustainable agriculture so that food production preserves the environment. The South African government does provide communities with land through various programs such as the Land Restitution Program. This has enabled communities to pursue their development agenda. It provides an opportunity for communities to enter into the biodiversity economy by growing wildlife, animals, and indigenous crops. These crops, in turn, are used for cultural and traditional medicinal purposes to support the traditional health industry and contributing to the overall well-being of people. As part of promoting the biodiversity economy, we recognize the need to protect natural resources like land and water. Moreover, the South African government has created the Land Care Program to enable a multiplicity of players to act in unison in the protection of biodiversity, community development initiatives, and most importantly, innovative financing for the protection of wild animals. With time permitting, I could share with you a myriad of other programs at the disposal of the South African government geared towards the promotion of the biodiversity economy. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for sharing those great examples of conservation finance in South Africa from a country that holds much of the world's wildlife and also putting a focus on the role and needs of the local communities. Thank you so much for that. I now welcome His Excellency Ambassador Eldior Toshmatov, Permanent Representative of the Republic of Uzbekistan to the United Nations and other organizations in Geneva, and the next host of the Conference of the Parties, the 20th Conference of the Parties of CITES in Samarkand, Uzbekistan, at the end of the year in November. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Secretary General, esteemed delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be with you today as we stand united in our common goal to safeguard the rich diversity of life on our planet. As we are at the celebration of World Wildlife Day, I am reminded of the crucial role we all play in ensuring a sustainable future for our ecosystems and the countless species that depends on them. Uzbekistan, under the leadership of our President Shavkat Mirziyoyev, is fully committed to addressing the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. In line with the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, we have launched a massive afforestation campaign in Aral Sea region, covering over 2 million hectares. This is just one of many efforts as part of our broader commitment to the Kunming-Montreal Global Diversity Framework. With initiatives like the Yashil Makon campaign, we plant 200 million trees annually with the goal of increasing green spaces by 30% by 2030. Uzbekistan's contribution to biodiversity conservation are also reflected in our national efforts to expand protected areas, which have grown from 4% to 14% in the last 6 years. We aim to increase this coverage to 20% by 2030, alongside a commitment to manage 30% of areas for conservation. And as Madam Secretary General informed, it is a great honor to announce that Uzbekistan will hold CITES COP20 in Samarkand on November 24, December 5th this year, a milestone event marking a 15th anniversary of the CITES Convention. Looking forward, Uzbekistan is committed to continue its efforts on wildlife protection with a special focus on transboundary cooperation and the protection of migratory species. As we work towards these objectives, we are aware of the alarming decline in biodiversity, particularly in Central Asia, where species have decreased by 35% in the last 5 decades. This is why we must all step up our efforts in wildlife conservation and invest in solutions that integrate people and the planet. I'm also proud to inform that Uzbekistan will host the International Conference on Central Asia and the face of global climate change, which will be held on beginning of April this year in Samarkand, and Eco Expo Central Asia 2025 on June this year in Tashkent. Ladies and gentlemen, as we celebrate the World Wildlife Day, let us remember that investing in wildlife conservation is not just an environment necessity, but a moral imperative for all well-being of all people. It's our responsibility to safeguard the planet's future, not only for ourselves, but for the generations that will follow. Once again, I express Uzbekistan's full commitment to supporting global efforts in wildlife conservation and environmental protection. We look forward to seeing you in Samarkand, and together we will continue to invest in nature, ensuring a brighter, greener future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for those inspiring words, and also what you're doing to be able to conserve wildlife, but not only the global cooperation that is needed, but the regional cooperation and the importance of that. So thank you very much for those words. I now welcome His Excellency Ambassador Julien Touny, Deputy Permanent Representative of Switzerland to the United Nations and other organizations in Geneva. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished guests, delegates, and ladies and gentlemen. It is also my great honor to address you on this important occasion, the World Wildlife Day 2025. This year is special for the CITES as it marks the 50th anniversary of the Convention's entry into force. Switzerland is proud to host the CITES Secretariat. We are honored that the authors of the Convention choose our country as the depository state. Located in Geneva, the CITES Secretariat benefits from the city's unique environment. Geneva's bring together international organizations, UN agencies, leading academic institutions, and also an engaged civil society. Their combined efforts create powerful synergies for sustainable development. Switzerland sees itself also as a champion of better cooperation among multilateral environmental agreements. We promoted specific language in the new Global Biodiversity Framework to encourage all relevant agreements to work together towards their ambitious goals. We also advocated for including all environmental agreements in the global review of biodiversity. Cooperation and synergies increase the effectiveness of our action plans and help protect biological diversity and species survival. World Wildlife Day is a moment important to celebrate, and to celebrate the incredible but threatened diversity of our natural world. This year's theme, Wildlife Conservation Finance, Investing in People and Planet, highlights the deep connection that we find between nature and people. Whether we live close to nature or far away, we all depend on a healthy planet. It's easy to forget this in our modern lives, but nature sustains us through the air we breathe, the food we eat, and also the resources that we use. The World Economic Forum reminds us that over half of the world's GDP is moderately or highly dependent on nature and its services. Many people around the world depend directly on wildlife and ecosystems for their income and food. And conserving nature is therefore crucial for global prosperity and well-being. To achieve this, we must explore new ways to finance wildlife conservation. Public funding alone is not enough. We need innovative solutions to meet the ambitious goals that we have set for ourselves. Today, about 1 million species face extinction. The IPBES report shows that billions of people depend on wild species for food, energy, and medicine. We are the first generation to name the species that have gone extinct in our lifetimes. Each year, more plants and animals disappear, while thousands more face imminent extinction. Yet, there is hope. Recent international agreements, such as the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the High Seas Treaty, show that by working together, we can achieve harmony with nature. We must ensure that species in international trade are managed sustainably so they remain for future generations. This is not just for the beauty and wonder, but also for economic and food security. Ultimately, it is about achieving a balanced coexistence between humans and the natural world. I'm confident that today's discussion will inspire us with stories and solutions. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to hearing from the upcoming speakers and panelists. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Excellency, and a thank you for hosting us here in Geneva and for all of the commitments you make and the strong support to CITES. And I think it's very important that you mentioned partnerships and working together. In a world where we have now scarce resources, we must be able to partner and work on synergies amongst the different multilateral environmental agreements. So thank you so much for that. We now have some video statements from various partners around the world. So we will start with Mr. Achim Steiner, who is the administrator of the UN Development Program.
Dear colleagues and friends, on behalf of the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, it is my privilege to join our close partner CITES to mark World Wildlife Day 2025. It highlights the intrinsic link between protecting wildlife and securing our collective futures. To forget this truth is to lose sight of one of humanity's most fundamental pillars of well-being. At the core of these efforts lies wildlife conservation, supported by the innovative financing needed to sustain it. Together with our many partners, UNDP continues to assist countries and communities to harness new financial solutions to protect wildlife and their habitats. For instance, consider the Tiger Landscape Investment Fund, which channels resources to protect tiger habitats in countries such as Malaysia, while at the same time benefiting local communities. Or look to the Rhino Bond, a pioneering initiative tying investment returns to tangible conservation outcomes such as growing endangered black rhino populations in South Africa. We need a system-wide transformation to fully integrate nature into global, national, and local decision-making. UNDP's Nature Pledge drives this vision by supporting over 140 countries today to put the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework into action. It encompasses groundbreaking efforts such as UNDP's Biodiversity Finance Initiative, which has catalyzed $1.5 billion in new biodiversity financing to date. On World Wildlife Day, I extend my deepest gratitude to our colleagues and friends and communities all over the world for their tireless dedication to protecting our natural world. The survival of wildlife and the wild spaces they inhabit are indeed the vital markers of a thriving world and a flourishing future for all life on Earth. Thank you.
Warm thanks to Achim for those great examples and the work that they are doing with the Biodiversity Financing Initiative. We have, just to say, we have translation in all three languages, English, Spanish, and French, if you need it. Don't be surprised when we switch back and forth, and I myself will switch back and forth from Spanish and French, so be prepared, and that's going to be an example that I'm going to do right now. Ahora tenemos un mensaje.
We now have a message from Ms. Gretel Aguilar,
Directora General
the
de la Unión
DG
Internacional
of
para
the
Conservación de la Naturaleza.
IUCN.
Distinguished colleagues and friends, today on UN World Wildlife Day 2025, we come together to celebrate the incredible diversity of life on our planet, its beauty, resilience, and the essential role it plays in sustaining humanity. It is our responsibility to ensure the future of our precious biodiversity. Investing in nature is investing in our future. Wildlife conservation is not just about protecting a species. It is about securing the ecosystems that sustain people, economies, and our collective well-being. From the bees that pollinate our crops to the forests and oceans that regulate our climate and secure our future. It is possible for all of us to conserve biodiversity and prosper. I am glad that we have seen some encouraging trends in recent years, as more and more people and organizations have come to realize that a thriving planet is essential for the thriving economy. Every sector of society must come together to make real difference. Governments, companies, and financial institutions must commit to nature-positive outcomes, and each of us must do our part because we all depend on a healthy planet that can support us. We have made strides, but as we look to the future, there remains a need for biodiversity financing to expand from case-by-case solutions towards an economy-wide approach, taking into consideration all economic, political, and institutional factors. We must take a more comprehensive and inclusive view to ensure the impact we make is real and lasting. At the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, we are bridging the gap between conservation and finance, bringing together the private and public sector along with the conservation community. Through just some examples of initiatives like the World Innovation Facility, the Blue Natural Capital Financing Facility, and the Blue Carbon Accelerator Fund, we are unlocking new opportunities to direct investments into conservation projects that benefit both people and the planet. These initiatives protect our precious wildlife, but they also do even more. They support sustainable livelihoods, strengthen climate resilience, and create long-term economic value for communities. Our message is clear. Financing wildlife conservation is not a cost. It is an investment in a stable, prosperous, and resilient future for all. And it is one that we must make together, united for nature. Government, business, financial institutions, experts, and the conservation community must work together to mobilize resources at a scale needed to protect our planet's wildlife and secure our own futures. We hope you will all stand with us. We must come together to drive this transformation with the expertise, partnerships, and tools needed to turn investment into real impact. Let's seize this moment to build a world where wildlife, people, and economies thrive together. Thank you for the opportunity to celebrate World Wildlife Day 2025 with you.
Gracias a Gretel por compartir las
Thank you, Gretel, for sharing the IUCN initiatives wherein there's cooperation between the private and public sectors as well as the conservation community.
Finally, last but not least, we will hear from Mr. Axel van Trotzenberg, Senior Managing Director of the World Bank.
At the World Bank Group, our mission is clear: to end poverty on a livable planet. Investing in nature is not just good for the environment, it is essential for the economy. As one of the largest multilateral financiers of nature, the World Bank Group provides the finance, knowledge, and innovation needed to sustainably manage biodiversity and wildlife and drive long-term growth. Through the Global Wildlife Program, supported by the Global Environmental Facility, we are creating jobs and opportunities in nature-based tourism while protecting biodiversity. The numbers speak for themselves. For every dollar governments invest in protected areas and nature-based tourism, their rate of return is at least 6 times the original investment, boosting jobs and local economies. In South Africa, our Rhino Bond is mobilizing private capital to protect the critically endangered black rhino population. This World Wildlife Day, join us on our mission to ensure a livable planet for all, one where wildlife, people, and economies thrive.
So thanks to Mr. Trausenberg from the World Bank to share with us about what their innovative work is doing and about the rhino bonds so people and economies can thrive together in harmony with nature. So please help me thank all of the high-level speakers we've had this morning with a round of applause. Now, we started a new tradition with our World Wildlife Days, where we mix technology with wildlife. And today we have an exciting musical performance with Miss Ellen Anahita Wilson. She is a sound artist from the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies. Miss Wilson will bring together her research in South Asian music and interspecies to her music making. And we're really looking forward to hear this. The floor is yours.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Helen Anahita Wilson, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher in health humanities and sound studies at SOAS University of London. But I'm also a composer and a sound artist. The music that you are currently listening to is 100% plant-derived, and I use a variety of biological and botanical data to compose with. I've been doing this for the last couple of years or so, and it came to me as a total surprise. I never anticipated making this kind of music. And actually, it was a response to a challenging experience in my own life that led me to this new creative practice. In 2019, I was diagnosed with cancer. And as a way of coming to terms with my experience and understanding the treatments that I received, I learned about the plants involved in chemotherapy treatments and other anti-cancer drugs. The music that you're currently listening to is called Linnea Naturalis, and it is made entirely from anti-cancer plants. Now, some of these plants are endangered. One of the plants in particular that plays a leading part in this music is the Camptotheca acuminata from Vietnam and southern China. This music draws attention to the crisis we collectively face in protecting our vital natural resources, particularly the medicinal flora across the globe. The protection of people and planet is essential for our collective health and for production of our contemporary medicines. For the protection of plants, which will yield new discoveries in healthcare in the future. I call this music biophilic music, and biophilic means for the love of life. And I try to create this music with love and respect for the natural world. And I've very kindly been provided with a small orchestra of plants here. So I'm now going to combine some live music created entirely from these plants in an ensemble piece with Linnea Naturalis. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson, for sharing this experience with us today and showing us your talents and listening to music derived from plants. I'm really a plants fan. I say that sometimes we pay too much attention. Animals are very important and we need to pay attention to them. I start by saying that, but I think we do forget about all of the treasures we have in the plant world and how much they are, we need them for humanity and also for ecosystems. So it's great to be reminded of that with this wonderful music. Now we're going to hear a message from the CITES Global Youth Network, or CGYN. And let's remember that what we are doing today is so important for the future of our youth, and how we manage our wildlife will make a difference for them in the future. So let's hear something from them.
We need to come together to protect our planet. From rainforests to sparse deserts, plants and animals sustain the intricate web of life that maintains the Earth's health.
Today, the triple planetary crisis of climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss needs to be addressed. Illegal wildlife trade is one of the world's largest crime sectors, worth billions annually, and a key threat to species survival. These crime networks are the result of poverty, corruption, inadequate enforcement, and political instability. All of this increases the prevalence of disease transmission between animals and humans. These health risks affect economies depending on ecotourism or employment. So what can youth do?
While regulation and enforcement through CITES is important to combat illegal wildlife trade, the active involvement of young people to champion legal and sustainable trade is equally important to achieve lasting change. Youths are passionate, driven, and powerful change makers who can engage with complex and multifaceted issues. The CITES Global Youth Network was kickstarted by youth in Singapore with a mission to use our fresh energies and abilities to act against illegal wildlife trade and promote sustainable trade.
As youth, we have to come together for sustainable wildlife trade.
So CGYN envisions a world where empowered youth from diverse backgrounds lead the way for legal and sustainable wildlife trade, while remaining committed to biodiversity conservation.
Research and innovation is incredibly important, as being able to get fresh ideas is one of the benefits of having youth on a team.
Technology is bigger and better than before, which can help our efforts to combat illegal wildlife trade.
Communication ensures that our communication is effective when we talk to people. Education allows us to get knowledge and also to research on areas that we're not familiar with. And in terms of public awareness, it allows us to then go about empowering the community after we have been empowered ourselves as youth.
Networking and collaboration are two important aspects. I believe collaborating with other youth from different countries will help us achieve the goal that we are fighting for.
We can help each other grow, and we can collaborate with other NGOs, governments, other organizations to really bring the hopes of the CGYN to fruition.
Capacity building just means being able to equip somebody with enough tools and resources to get a job done. And to do that, we need to be able to properly equip ourselves, responding during interventions and committee meetings.
Being part of this network is actually such a great opportunity for you to be able to raise your voice and be able to be here as well.
We are very energetic, we are very agile, we are adaptable.
We have a lot to offer for the rest of the network, and I hope they have a lot to teach us as well.
Whatever we're doing here is for the future and for our grandkids, for their kids, and that's why it's super important that we continue to work on this.
My vision for the future is that we as a global community achieve to use wildlife in a sustainable way so that we can tackle biodiversity and climate crisis.
I think protecting our wildlife is the most important thing that we can do in this world because they're just so special.
They're the future decision makers, and they need to be engaged in this process of CITES when it comes to the survival of this wild species in nature, because it's all for them. We depend on these wild species for almost everything in life, and they need to be part of that decision making.
We believe that uniting the next generation of leaders needs to start now. As we rise to decision-making roles and inherit the planet, it is our right and our responsibility to have a seat at the table, to voice our concerns and contribute to international discourse. We will do so in a mature manner where youths are informed, rational, and objective for sustainable trade of species whilst balancing wildlife conservation. As future leaders and guardians of our world's biodiversity, together we will bring a positive change.
You can't imagine how energetic this group of people are. Really, my warmest thanks to CGYN for inspiring us all, for engaging with all the youth to make them understand and how important it is for wildlife conservation. Let's have a little applause. We're behind time, but they are so impassioned and active. So now we're moving on to part one of our panel discussion, and I'm pleased to welcome our expert panel for a discussion on the innovations that they are developing and implementing to help governments, financial institutions, indigenous peoples, local communities, and women to access the financial resources needed to achieve lasting conservation impact. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Karma Sharing, Managing Director of the Bhutan Trust Fund for Environmental Conservation. Thank you for coming from so far. Ms. Pamela Castillo, Director of Marine 30 by 30 at the Wildlife Conservation Society. Ms. Isabel Cohen, Director of Strategic Partnerships and Impact at Nature Finance. Ms. Gwen Yu, Global Head of Nature and Biodiversity at JP Morgan. And Ms. Jessica Smith, Nature Lead of the UN Environment Program Finance Initiative, or UNEP-FI. Dr. Karma Sharing, it is a pleasure to welcome you to Geneva from Timtu. I hope I say that right. We are grateful that you could join us to share your experience establishing the world's first environment trust fund in Bhutan in 1991, and to describe how this long-term approach to wildlife conservation can deliver lasting conservation impact. Could you share with us what lessons can be drawn from Bhutan's journey for other countries looking to establish similar mechanisms? Please. It's the top button.
Good morning to all. At the outset, firstly, thank you so much for getting me over. For a person like me from a country that is genuinely committed to conservation, it's always a great pleasure to participate in such forums. At the personal level, I started my career as a young person 30 years ago as the Bhutan's Tiger Conservation Coordinator. So wildlife is very close to my heart. So thank you very much for getting me over here. So when it comes to Bhutan's commitment to conservation, the setting up of this Bhutan Trust Fund as the world's first environmental trust fund is one of the demonstrations of how committed we are. 1991, Bhutan, we are still a very developing country. I think every country tries to pursue economic development over environmental conservation. Our country, although economic development is a priority, yet with enlightened leadership through our kings, the world's first environmental trust fund has been set up. I feel very proud to go to many meetings to show this as a very sustainable financing mechanism. Trust funds, from my experience in Bhutan, for that matter, I think in any country, if you can have trust funds, I feel it's really, because at the end, we need conservation finance to support a lot of our conservation works. And the advantages of having trust fund is a long-term solution. It becomes part of our daily business in governance to have money set aside for environmental conservation. When we started off with $20 million raised in 1996. And as of now, we have $80 million. And it is not an accumulation over these years, but it's basically our disbursement annually is over $2 million. Annually in the country, we provide access to funding to a lot of NGOs, communities at $2 million, which is set aside for them. And the other advantages of having trust fund is, besides this local financing that can be provided, the credibility that the trust fund for Bhutan has built up, we have access to other funding. We are the only local entity in the country that is accredited to Green Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund. Likewise, there are a lot of other partners who reach out to us who want to do some programs to Bhutan. So basically, my conclusion is that trust fund is a very successful mechanism for supporting biodiversity conservation. So if there are some countries that would like to set up some entities, Bhutan, we are part of this global community, good experiences that we have, we would love to share it with you all. And we would definitely like to support any countries to see, to help you all how trust funds can support long-term environmental conservation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharing, for sharing those experiences. And definitely, I think that if any country is interested in hearing more about this, we should be approached. We have I won't ruin the surprise. There'll be an opportunity for you to be able to speak with Dr. Sharing a little bit later. So thank you so much. Y ahora le doy la palabra.
I now give the floor to Ms. Pamela Castillo from the Society for the Conservation of
Señora Castillo,
Wildlife Conservation Society. As former Vice Minister of Environment in Costa Rica, has driven forward conservation policies by promoting gender inclusion. She now leads the WCS effort to protect 30% of oceans by 2030 through the initiative 30 by 30. How do you believe that policies and partnerships can unblock national resources for conservation and ensure equitable sharing of financial resources? Dr. Castillo, you have the floor. Good morning. Thank you very much indeed, first of all, for inviting us. We are determined to protect wildlife in the world. We've been doing it for 100 years, and thank you so much for inviting us at this, the 50th anniversary of this very important convention, namely CITES. May I begin? Given that we've heard repeatedly what the message was in the previous panel, all about cooperation, the challenge we face is this: we are a private company, we are called to work in partnerships. Governments are those who invest most in biodiversity conservation, but the partnership funds to close the gap, the financial gaps that exist, are required, and we can only achieve this if we embody in the backbone of the development agenda on biodiversity these things. As you said, this isn't an expenditure, it's not a luxury, it's a need, it's an emergency. We need to be included in the bioconservation backbone. From 2018 to 2020, it was an honor for me to lead what we did in Costa Rica, especially FONAFIF. It was an honor for me, but at the same time, it was also a chance for me to observe things. We weren't benefiting in what we were doing, women. We began to carry out gender gap surveys, and then organizing synergies and partnerships with other sectors who told us about things we didn't know. For over 20 years, we had ignored the structural causes explaining why women don't have access to the benefits of biodiversity. This is our original sin. Our original sin is denying women land ownership. Without land ownership, if a woman doesn't own land, especially on coastal lands, they do not have access to the public institutions, technical assistance, or to the incentives or the funds on biodiversity. Concretely, we created a program called a program resting on 3 financial mechanisms. The first of which is paying for environmental services, number 1, because we needed to understand the structural causes. And having done that, we changed our assessment system to target through affirmative action those women who could be involved. Because if you look at 1,000 applications, women were lost in the system and never ended up as a finalist. They weren't selected. So the affirmative action in what we did. So from 2020 to 2024, $2 million were invested over the course of 10 years for women, rural women, to help them to conserve their forests, to restore them, and to develop agroforest resources. FONAFIFO, our organization, issued a special credit line designed solely for women with a very low interest rate, because its guarantee is linked to the environmental services providers. But that wasn't enough. So we developed a partnership with the private sector, also with a corporation fund and the social system of Costa Rica. And when we went to the social sectors, it became interesting because we found ourselves working on the same things. It was an opportunity for us to be able to increase conservation of wildlife and our forests. But for the social program, what they were interested in was livelihoods, guaranteeing them. So we, together in our partnership in this mixed system, generated another budget line or credit for rural women. But this time, women living in extreme poverty, because normally in the most rural areas where poverty is in our territories, these are neglected, which means that today over $500,000 have been invested in the most poor districts of Costa Rica for women, for them to become entrepreneurs in developing businesses that are related to biodiversity, conserving forests, agriculture, cosmetics that are made with medicinal plants. All these businesses grew, including during the pandemic. So, to conclude, when public policies become different, better, because we work with data, but if we work comprehensively as an ecosystem involving in the environment, the social sector, and the private sector, if we work together holistically, we can create opportunities for the survival of the planet, but also for the survival of our communities who are most left behind. Thank you very much indeed.
Muchas gracias, señora.
Thank you very much, Ms. Castillo, for highlighting how important it is for all of us from various sectors to cooperate, and not just traditional sectors. There are not enough funds in the public sector alone, so we also have to be part of the economy, because conservation is important for the economy, and we must highlight the role that women play in preserving wildlife and the opportunities that they need. Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Isabel Cohen from Nature Finance. I understand that part of your work to leverage the role of finance for tackling the triple planetary crisis in equitable and impactful ways. To that end, Nature Finance is also supporting the Global Initiative on Bioeconomy through the upcoming G20 Summit in South Africa and UN Climate Conference, or COP30, in Brazil. How do you think financial innovation can help attract public and private finance for the transition to this bioeconomy?
Thank you very much for having me to speak on Nature Finance's partnerships for scaling the global sustainable bioeconomy. And thank you also to Dr. Wilson for her personal experience reminding us of the importance of nature to pharmaceutical innovation, which is a key characteristic of a sustainable and thriving bioeconomy. I would love to sit here and say that finance can transition the global economy to planetary sustainability by itself. But government strategies and policies are required to shape financial returns, market expectations, and market signals for the role of nature in the green transition. And we've seen it play out in recent elections that governments will only have a mandate to act if nature is understood to address core social, political, and economic imperatives. Linking nature positive to resilience and adaptation, to jobs and livelihoods, to new trade opportunities and innovation will be key to market and political uptake at all levels. Under Brazil and now South Africa's G20 presidencies, the Global Initiative on Bioeconomy has proven a powerful driver for new research and policy action. And now is the moment for commensurate financing innovation to put nature at the center of economic development. Brazil's focus on the nexus of the socio-bioeconomy, nature, and land use as part of climate action may drive new commitments around adaptation finance at COP30. The integration of natural capital valuation into corporate and sovereign accounting, as in Costa Rica's payment for ecosystem services, could enable countries to invest in bioeconomy strategies for that resilience and adaptation, but only, and crucially only, if credit ratings and debt sustainability analyses evolve to match that enhancement in natural capital with a corresponding enhancement in the country's rating and its inability to attract financial capital on international markets. Public finance, performance linked to bioeconomy indicators, can direct investment to the research, development, and innovation required to scale bioeconomy enterprise. In sub-sovereign and retail financing, performance linking can open up local and locally denominated markets, which incorporate blended finance, carbon and biodiversity credits, payments for ecosystem services, all of the systems that we're currently seeing arise into place. There may also be a role here for remediated payments through the Cali Fund agreed at COP16. As an intermediate pathway to more structural reform of harmful subsidies, partnering within regional trade blocs can make sustainable bioeconomy products eligible for existing schemes. We're seeing this in the East African communities' bioeconomy strategy already. While in Brazil, the invasion of Ukraine and its effect on the supply chain for fertilizers has created a window to co-opt insurance subsidies to offer crop or agri-credit insurance premium reductions for transition to regenerative agriculture. In preferential procurement, efforts are ongoing on the African continent to link regenerative agriculture development to regional nutrition programs for schools. And the increasingly compelling case for nature for infrastructure extends beyond the conservation and restoration of mangroves and reefs, crucial as that is, to linking MDB procurement to investments in regionally based biomaterials such as biocement and biosteel. In a world rapidly warming beyond 1.5 degrees, the bioeconomy represents an adaptation-driven model which facilitates a shift from a fossil fuel-based economy to a bio-based one at an equivalent scale to the clean tech revolution in the energy transition. It's also a model which puts nature-rich countries in a position to benefit from their abundant natural capital rather than see its value extracted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen, and for highlighting the importance of the bioeconomy and all the work that you're doing to bring also the public and private finance together. And hopefully we will have more examples to be able to use in the future after, and with the discussions at G20 and COP30, I'm hoping for more good news in the future for all of us. Now I'd like to present Ms. Gwen Yu, joining us from JP Morgan. These financial institutions, as you know, play a critical role in facilitating the flow of capital to conservation. We are seeing financial mechanisms like debt for nature swaps that we've been talking about, species bonds, payment for ecosystem services, and others evolving to help unlock greater investment in nature. What are some of the barriers, you think, to financial institutions that they are facing now? What do they need to strengthen their contributions to wildlife conservation?
Thank you for having me. And I think we heard a lot of the examples earlier. I think the main challenge I would say is what we look at as a financial institution is what is the business case? So if I break down what the business case then could potentially be, and then I'll talk through some of the examples where some solutions potentially is one, is it going to be profitable? And that's fundamentally where we go to as an institution because we are a bank, and a bank's main job is risk management and serving our clients for the different opportunities that are there. So within the business case itself, then we look for proof points. Have these transactions been done before? How was it received by the market? Was the demand there? A lot of the examples that were stated earlier, these are great proof points for UNIP-FI. They have a case study book, pamphlet, document that's out there. So that's positive in getting over that first challenge of saying, has this been done before? Was it effective? Second is if we are structuring a product and it's a new product, we have to go through all our internal compliance, legal, governance, making sure that if there is some sort of sustainability impact that product is claiming, that we are able to measure it, and that over time, this is something that we can continue to measure. So the data then is important. And the continuation of being able to monitor that data and having boots on the ground to make sure that what is being said is actually being done, that's relevant. Third is if we want to get to profitability, that means that we want to be able to scale the product, because initially you get kind of a leeway to say, okay, it's first of its kind, we'll give you some time to get this product into the market and then we'll see how it goes. If let's say that takes 12 months to 18 months. You can do that for the first two potentially, but you need to be able to scale it faster to get it to market. So those are some of the main challenges. I think one hurdle to get over some of these is to show that for the traditional products that we have as a bank, that it is possible to embed nature within it. So let's take a very classic sustainable finance product like green bonds. If we're looking at the use of proceeds of it, can some of that go into conservation? If you're looking at a sustainability linked loan or bond, some of the metrics, so I go back to the data issue that I mentioned earlier, that could also be embedded for nature related or for conservation related products. Some of the more innovative products like debt for nature transactions that you spoke about, debt for nature transactions are basically debt buyback. So it's a classic product that have been tweaked so that there is a debt for X, impact, nature, conservation, whatever you want to fill in the blanks for. So as long as those, it's kind of this triangulation Venn diagram with 3 circles, as long as that fits, then I feel that those are potential solutions to some of the challenges that we face.
Thank you for that on the challenges and how possibly we can, what solutions we could use to be able to address those. And I think maybe with the next speaker, we'll hear a little bit more about that. But in some of the bonds that were presented, for example, with the Rhino bond, you also have institutions that can lower the risk. And if you have those kinds of investments where institutions come into play and say, we're ready to put something in here so we can lower the risk, and then that you can see the profit for those private for the private finance to get involved. I think that's a good solution, but of course we need a range of solutions. So maybe we can hear a little bit more about that. Thank you so much, Ms. Yu. From Jessica Smith, our final panelist from the UNEP Finance Initiative, or UNEP FI. And I recently heard that one of the biggest challenges with financing species-specific conservation is being able to effectively measure impact at scale, with also you have mentioned, Ms. Yu, and in particular, you're helping drive innovation in banking and insurance to support community livelihoods and those facing human-wildlife conflict, which there's a lot of discussions about, and many countries who have wildlife could attest to that. How do we make sure that these communities, whether beneficiaries or stewards of conservation, have direct access to sustainable financing?
Thank you so much, Yvonne. And I just want to start off on a personal note. I'm really honored to be here. I'm actually not the first person in my family who's been working on nature conservation. There's a few of us. And I actually brought my son today in hopes that we might actually have a third generation of nature activists in the family. So hi, Hudson. Great. So as Yvonne mentioned, I lead the nature program at the UNEP Finance Initiative, and we work with banks, insurers, and investors and try to shift finance away from activities that are harming nature towards activities that are supporting nature, including some of the species-specific products that have been mentioned today. So banks are involved, for example, in bonds, as people have mentioned, in debt swaps, in loans where there's a use of proceeds with a species tag. And actually, although species-specific bonds are growing, and Rand Merchant Bank, I see the ambassador for South Africa in my direct eye line, is actually releasing around 233 million USD this year in wild dog and lion bonds. So there's more species bonds. I know Akeem mentioned the tiger bond as well. There's actually $400 billion on the capital markets that has one or another tag for nature. So we can think about also the ecosystems and the habitats that support wildlife as an important impact area as well. Insurers are getting in on the game. So actually there's a lot of new insurance products, including human-wildlife conflict insurance, which aligns the interests of communities that are affected by wildlife with the interests of an insurer and to pay for prevention. So there's a lot of innovation that's happening in this space. And actually the role of Indigenous peoples and local communities, as well as Afro-descendant communities, is being more and more recognized. And, I think Gwen's intervention was great because she's, we're a bank, we're here to manage risk and make money. And, if we think about what is good business is getting good value and cutting out the middleman and actually working directly with Indigenous communities, nature stewards, those who are on the ground, who have local intelligence, who know about the area, who have interventions in mind, who have been successful in stewarding biodiversity. So far, working directly with those communities, it is a big mindset shift for the financial sector, who often think about communities as a risk to a project, potentially a source of protest or conflict, and actually thinking about those as the agents that you want to employ to be successful in your project. So we have been working particularly with our banks because we think that they have the most potential on the front line, but also investors and others through the Finance for Biodiversity Pledge to help them understand how Indigenous peoples, Afro-descendant communities, other local communities are really their agents in the field. And Indigenous peoples, for example, steward around 71% of the world's primate territory, around 77% of tropical vertebrates. Many Indigenous territories are stewarded as well or better than state protected areas set up for that purpose. So if I am a business person, I think that sounds like very good value. So we often hear from the UN Permanent Forum for Indigenous Issues, and they have a new chair, Hindu Ibrahim, who's been telling bankers, give us the money. We are the nature experts, and we will show you the returns. So we're actually coming into, I think, a new era, and this is being reflected in the Global Biodiversity Framework, which both encourages more private finance to come online, but also encourages having Indigenous peoples, local communities, not only as beneficiaries, but as agents. And I'm really proud here this week that we're hosting the Biodiversity Credit Alliance meetings in Geneva this week. And actually, we took from the very start point with our colleagues at UNDP of setting up the Biodiversity Credit Alliance that if there is to be a new market in this space, we should have Indigenous leadership, not only in an individual transaction or later on receiving some funding, but actually shaping the market and shaping the definition of a biodiversity credit from the word go. So Friday we had a fantastic outcome at the resumed negotiations of the CBD COP16, and we do have a global plan to bring $200 billion in new finance for nature every year online, getting us to 2030. And we do really see that the financial sector is going to be working more and more closely with Indigenous peoples, Afro-descendant communities, other local communities to make that happen together. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. This is great to hear because these are some of the discussions that we have. You're absolutely right. The stewards, those are in the front lines, those who are protecting and conserving wildlife and their habitats. They need incentives to be able to do that. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that is that they benefit directly from that conservation. So looking towards how we can work with them closely, because sometimes these very big, large grants and loans go to at the macro level with structural aspects and not so much getting to the people who are actually on the ground taking care of our wildlife. So thank you, and it's great to hear about that. And hopefully we will have more and more innovative solutions like that. Now, thanks to the panelists for this first part, I would like to turn to the floor. We have some statements from the floor by member states, some brief interventions. I would like to call firstly upon His Excellency Ambassador Tovar da Silva Nunes, Permanent Representative Brazil to the United Nations Office and other international organizations in Geneva. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary General. Un saludo cordial de nuestra parte. We are actually very honored to participate in today's celebration of the World Wildlife Day. And we think that indeed this year's theme is very particularly timely because mobilized resources for nature is not a cost or an expense. It is indeed a good non-predatory investment. Healthy ecosystems provide essential services from pollination to climate regulation that sustain life on our planet. In spite of that, biodiversity is unevenly distributed, with developing countries stewarding the majority of the world's natural wealth. And they do that on their own most of the times. And that's why we have to change that. Because largely the financing comes from developing countries in order to maintain those riches and resources. So while we deeply appreciate international cooperation, the scale of support remains insufficient. Now more than ever, we must revive the spirit of solidarity that underpinned the adoption of multilateral environmental agreements. And to meet this challenge, we must mobilize resources from all available sources, public, private, domestic, international. Innovative mechanisms are crucial. Brazil's initiative, for example, to launch the Tropical Forest Forever facility at COP30 exemplified this approach. By leveraging sovereign investments to attract private capital, it will fund sustainable assets and reward tropical forest nations with payments per hectare of preserved land. Last week, the CBD COP16 in Rome brought encouraging news. As we have heard from Jessica Smith, parties agreed to improve the mobilization of resources from all sources and establish the permanent arrangements for the financial mechanisms of the CBD, which has been operated by the GEF on an interim basis since 1992. So closing that biodiversity finance gap is essential. Only with collective action can we put the planet on a path to halt and reverse biodiversity loss. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and you're speaking the words that I say as an economist, that the benefits of biodiversity conservation, wildlife conservation are global, but often the costs are local, and we have to be able to remedy that situation. Thank you so much. Ahora invitamos a Su Excelencia la
And now we would like to invite Her Excellency Ambassador Francisca Mendez Escobar, Permanent Representative of Mexico for the United Nations Office and other organizations in Geneva. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Muchísimas gracias, querida secretaria.
Thank you so much, Executive Secretary,
Distinguidos embajadores.
distinguished ambassadors, dear colleagues.
Hoy nos reunimos para
Today, we have met to celebrate beauty, diversity, and the importance of wildlife on Earth.
Además, a lo largo de esta
And
mañana,
what's more, throughout this morning, we have all thought together about how important it is to have, urgently, sufficient financial resources to protect our ecosystems, for human survival hinges on their balance.
en México, país megadiverso,
In Mexico, a mega-diverse country, one with a deep call for sustainable development, we are working to find innovative financial solutions which would allow governments, the private sector, and other key sectors to collaborate on preserving and making use of wildlife while supporting communities that depend upon them. Today, we would like to share with you 4 examples. One, as part of the Global UNDP Initiative for Financing Biodiversity, also known as BioFin, the federal government is working with 14 entities throughout the country by promoting the use of funds and trust funds and facilitating resource mobilization to preserve and sustainably use biodiversity. This has allowed us, for example, to strengthen the management of our protective wildlife areas and to make headway in protecting wild invasive species in various parts of the country. Yet another example that I am pleased to share with you is that of the wildlife preservation management units, which are opportunities to promote alternative production systems that are compatible with preservation and with the sustainable use of wildlife, where the owners of the land commit to preserve the species, the population, and their habitat, while at the same time obtaining some benefit from their sustainable use. Trade, ecotourism, nature photography are examples of some of these. These opportunities create jobs and financial incentives to communities, while at the same time protecting species and ecosystems. Examples such as the cimarrón management in Mexico show how these experiences can be emulated. Another important aspect is collaboration among sectors. Multidisciplinary groups, such as the Group of Experts in Mexico, have promoted sustainable trade management and access to financing that protect the species, as we have said during the last session of the Executive Council of CITES. And lastly, certification and labeling, biodiversity-friendly labeling system for products such as honey and cocoa and coffee, developed with the support of the Global Environmental Facility, make it possible for consumers to support biodiversity through their purchasing decisions, while at the same time encouraging producers by allowing them to have a greater profits. Today, Mexico would like to reiterate its commitment to financing sustainable development of wildlife. We are proud of the actions we have taken, but we realize that much remains to be done. To invest in nature is to invest not in our future, but in our present. Let us work together to protect our planet, its natural wealth, and the well-being of all of us who find ourselves here today and the generations that will follow us. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Excelencia.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for the numerous examples that you have shared of Mexico, a country that is blessed by so many exciting species and a country that is helping indigenous population and local communities to a great extent. So thank you. Now we move to the African region, and I would like to give the floor to Her Excellency Ambassador Mireille Saran-Sensei, Permanent Representative of the Republic of Gabon. Ambassador in UN Office in Geneva and other international organizations. Secretary General, ambassadors, partners, colleagues, guests. Commemorated every March 3rd since 2014, World Wildlife Day is an opportunity to reaffirm our commitment towards the protection of wildlife species, given the many threats that loom over them. With an exceptionally wealthy natural heritage, Gabon adopted quite early on an environmental policy that sought to protect biodiversity while at the same time promoting sustainable development. And indeed, since 2002, a network of 13 parks was created covering 11% of the national territory. Gabon would like to implement a global general plan for the preservation and sustainable development to protect 30% of the land, 30% of the ecosystem, and 30% of oceans by 2030. This bold, innovative policy thereby gives us the status of a country with a high forest cover and low rate of deforestation, and the last natural sanctuary in tropical Africa for many threatened species, such as African elephant, the sea turtles, and the Gabonese gray parrot, which are found in the annex of CITES. We are determined to protect our diversity and sustainably manage our natural resources, and this depends on financing for biodiversity and developing innovative financial instruments. We could mention the payments for environmental services, for example, such as the financial contribution of 150 million US dollars of the Central African Forest Initiative, which allows us to maintain our forest cover at 88%, and also which gives us a high carbon sequestration capacity, which helps us to combat climate change. The debt nature swap mechanisms restructure the national debt in exchange for investment, such as the agreement to swap 50 million US dollars for the sustainable management of forest ecosystems, or the blue bonds for $500 million to address sea preservation goals. The mobilization of $60 million is part of the new partnership for forest ecosystems. The country package support our commitment to reach the bold goal, the bold target of protecting 30% of our ecosystems by 2030. In July 2023, Gabon created the Fund for the preservation of biodiversity in Gabon and to mobilize continuous resources to protect the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, together we could even find more innovative, long-lasting solutions for balanced, respectful nature management. Thank you.
Merci, Votre Excellence, pour les exemples de conservation de la.
Thank you, Excellency, for your examples and for.
Des plantes. Merci beaucoup pour ça. We now turn to the Asia region. I call upon Her Excellency Ambassador Bratrana Ditsayatat to give us some words as Deputy Permanent Representative of Thailand to the United Nations Office and other international organizations in Geneva. Madame.
Madam Secretary General, Excellencies, greetings to friends of fauna and flora. Sawadee ka. I am honored to join you today in celebrating the United Nations World Wildlife Day 2025. The first celebration of World Wildlife Day took place at the UN headquarters in New York in 2014, co-hosted by Thailand, Germany, and CITES. As you know, that Thailand was instrumental in proposing a UN resolution to mark this important day. Under this year's theme, I am pleased to share with you how Thailand is investing in people and planet to preserve and promote a healthy life, wildlife, and ecosystem. Although Thailand's total area amounts to only 0.4% of the total world's area, 10% of the world's diversity can be found in Thailand. Every year, half of the annual budget of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment is allocated to wildlife conservation and forest management. Furthermore, Thailand is among the 30+ countries that have been benefiting from the Biodiversity Finance Initiatives, or BioFin, like Mexico, initiated by UNDP in 2012. One of Biofin's flagship finance solution in Thailand is the coral reef rehabilitation in Koh Tao, which many of you might know is a very famous diving spot in Thailand, and through the setting up of a Blue Guardian Fund. The project has been successful in protecting the rich biodiversity of Koh Tao through a whole-of-society approach, especially with the local community. Another successful project was the sale of special conservation vehicle license plates with lucky numbers to support tiger conservation at the Western Forest Complex. And as a result, the population of the wild tigers in Thailand increased significantly from 40 to around 200 in 20 years. And Thailand has been recognized as the champion of tiger conservation in Southeast Asia. The private sector has also been very active in conservation funding, such as the issuance of the green bond valued at $54 million to fund environment projects over a period of 7 years, and this is up to this year. So finally, I would just like to reiterate that Thailand is committed to further explore innovative financial initiatives for wildlife conservation with our stakeholders and the international community. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Excellency, for sharing your experiences in Thailand with new and innovative mechanisms, and also for your leadership in ensuring that we could have a celebration of World Wildlife Day every year. Thanks to all of the panelists and also the interventions from the floor from the representatives of the various parties who are showing us your perspectives on wildlife conservation. We really are grateful for that. We now have a short session. We're running a little bit behind time, and I know there's a meeting here at 12:30, so we need to be out in time. But we wanted to give the opportunity to some students here in Geneva to ask a couple of questions to the panelists, and I will ask the one panelist for each of the questions, please, because we won't have time to open it to the entire panel. First, I'd like to call upon Zebun Nisa Nasir to ask her question. Are you here? Okay, there you go. Okay, please.
All right,
The
my
floor is
question
yours.
is, My question is, given existing financial mechanisms like the Green Climate Fund, the Global Environment Facility, and others, how can funds be structured better to ensure more direct, equitable, and effective financial support for Indigenous communities who are often the frontline stewards of biodiversity?
Thank you so much for that interesting question. We've been talking about that. Who would like to, from the panel, respond to that question? Yes, Jessica, thank you.
Thank you so much for the excellent question. So the issue of direct access is one that's a very hot topic in the financial field right now. But actually, direct access to finance is not a new topic. So I see Terrence Hay-Edie from the UNDP Jeff Small Grants program here. For decades now, actually, frontline communities have been directly receiving finance, managing that finance, and in many cases, setting up businesses and making returns where the benefits are distributed to the community. So we actually have many, many examples from the SGP and beyond where this is working in practice, and we're seeing a lot more innovation right now. So for example, in the biodiversity credit market, there is a company called Savimbo, which is an Indigenous-led company, and so they have defined how we would like to monitor biodiversity, and they've set up credits for individual species, for habitat management, for carbon management, and others, and they're selling their credits. And there is a study by Bloom Labs that suggests that 92%, and I think it's less than that, but the research suggests that 92% of biodiversity credit companies have some Indigenous leadership in them. So that's one mechanism where, and as I mentioned, we have the Biodiversity Credit Alliance meetings here this week, where you can actually have Indigenous leadership, and you're, very efficient in terms of setting up monitoring that is appropriate locally. But Also, we're seeing a lot of guarantee products. So actually, my PhD research is in Southern Africa on community-led conservation. And one of the main factors here is that a lot of Indigenous-led territories are actually owned by the government with resource rights to communities. So you need actually a guarantee product so that communities can have, for example, collateral or backing to be able to access, loans and finance at a bigger and bigger scale. So there's quite a lot of de-risking products. And actually, fortunately, a lot of the multilateral development banks are on board with this and they see this. And I would give a shout out to IDB, who've been quite innovative, for example, in their Amazon fund in ensuring that a very large proportion of the finance for bioeconomy activities is going to Indigenous leadership. So I could talk about this all day, but I'll hand back to Yvonne.
Unfortunately, we don't have all day, and it would be great. Another time, we need to do another meeting that will last longer. Thank you so much. And thank you, Ms. Nazir, for your question. Now I give the floor to Ms. Yaoyue Xiao, who will be asking a question also to the panel. Are you here? Yes, please. The floor is yours.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm a student at a graduate institute, and my question is, in the context of the wildlife conservation finance, what are the feasible ways for us, for the individuals and the small business to participate or engage in directly? Thank you.
In the context of wildlife conservation finance, what feasible ways exist for the public, individuals, or small businesses to participate directly? Now, not necessarily Indigenous people, but small businesses. Anybody? No, unfortunately. No. Yeah, Lorena.
Yes, just to go back to the example of Costa Rica, because I think that from the financial mechanisms we discussed today, that's an example of how small businesses run by women actually access funds that were de-risked by another ministry of Costa Rica. There was the social program that make able to women to thrive their businesses related to biodiversity. As an individual, think that we have a power of consumption. So how we select the products we buy, that's the first decision that we have every day, every single day. When we wake up, we have the decision of what products we want to buy. But yes, and second one, as a small business, there are. But the thing is, for access these products out there that exist, I think that we need to get better as a global community to have more local offices that run and disseminate these mechanisms, as well as provide technical assistance to local communities to understand how to access this. We need to make it simpler. A lot of requirements, a lot of documents are needed. So maybe we need to to have regional, local hubs that help local communities to know where is or what are the diversity of options that they have for small businesses to run. But if you are a small businesses as well, you have the power of decide what on your production, on your product, what materials you want to use on what practices. And there's a lot of guides there and a lot of certification as well now to be Biodiversity Plus. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Castillo, for responding to that and for the students' questions. To all the panelists, we have to move on to our next event. We're running out of time, as I mentioned, but please, a round of applause for our panelists. So I would like to now invite to the panel, to the discussion here at the front, my colleagues from IFAL to present on the IFAL Youth Art Contest, where we have now an opportunity to shine a spotlight on the incredible artistic talent of our youth. We have once again partnered with the International Fund for Animal Welfare, or IFAL, who have run the annual International Youth Art Contest in conjunction with the World Wildlife Day celebration for many years now. We are joined here on my left by Mr. Matt Collis, Senior Director of Policy at IFAL. Mr. Collis, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Secretary General, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, it's a pleasure to be here today to represent the International Fund for Animal Welfare, or IFOR, in our World Wildlife Day partnership with the CITES Secretariat and UN Development Programme. This year marks the 7th annual Youth Art Contest hosted by IFOR as part of that partnership. And the contest brings youth from diverse backgrounds together through the shared language of art. And we're delighted to be able to share the beauty of this artwork with you today and to celebrate the talents of the young artists who inspire us all. This year's winner was chosen from over 3,400 entries, covering 140 countries and territories around the world. And before the winning artist is announced by IFOR's President and CEO, Azadine Downs, we have a few short words from Icelandic conservation artist Stefan Peterson, who is an artist and designer who works to create change through visual impact, taking complex topics to create illustrations to engage curiosity and inspire positive action.
Hi there, my name is Stefán Ingi Pétursson and I am a conservation illustrator from Iceland. I'm thrilled to lend my voice to celebrate the 2025 World Wildlife Day Youth Art Contest winners and all of those who entered. When I see artwork from around the world, I'm always reminded that art is like a universal language that we can share our thoughts and ideas without using words. And it's just such a beautiful way to connect with people from all over the world. Humans are a visual and story-driven species, and I truly believe that art and storytelling has the power to change people's minds, to make people see things in a different light, and it truly has the power to change the world. So I hope that you will continue to develop your skills, to explore, and continue to inspire people through your works. I basically grew up with pen and paper in my hand, and the way that I made sense of the world, processed things, and communicated was through drawing and creating stories. And it's a real gift to be able to take what's in your head and translate that into something that other people can see and feel. I want to encourage you to keep nurturing that gift, keep exploring, and keep pushing your ideas forward. And yeah, honestly, can't wait to see what you will create next.
Every year, I'm inspired by the incredible talent of these young artists and thankful that they choose to share their love of the natural world and messages of hope through their art. World Wildlife Day 2025 marks the 7th year of this incredible partnership, for which we thank the CITES Secretariat and colleagues at UNDP. Over that time, the contest has grown from about 400 entries from 19 countries to this year's record of more than 3,400 entries, representing 140 different countries and sovereign areas around the world. For me, the growth of the art contest is a poignant reminder that movements which inspire hope have the power to spread exponentially. And bringing people around the world together for shared causes like conserving the world's wildlife can produce outcomes far greater than the sum of their parts. This year's theme, Wildlife Conservation Finance, Investing in People and Planet, comes at a really critical time. Our planet provides countless natural resources that we rely on for both the human and economic well-being: clean air and water, a stable climate, and a massive array of biodiversity. But whose financial responsibility is it to preserve this balance? Who pays for these resources and the ultimate costs of neglecting them? We all must, from governments to private companies to individuals. It is our shared responsibility. Simply put, it will take innovative, creative finance mechanisms across sectors to ensure the future where nature, wildlife, and people can thrive. To honor this year's theme, artists were asked to choose species that benefit from conservation programs, which include many of the planet's threatened and endangered species. We received images of elephants, toucans, crocodiles, manatees, insects, and thousands of other animals from land to sea, reminding us of the intricate web of life on which we all depend. The decision, as always, was incredibly difficult. It's my pleasure to announce the winner of this year's International Youth Art Contest is Miss Kara Cheng from the United States with her painting titled Witness, depicting a scene of the deforestation reflected in the eye of an owl. Kara was a finalist in the 2022 competition, and we're so glad to have her back as our 2025 winner. Congratulations, Kara. I'll pass it over to Kara to close us on this year's World Wildlife Day International Youth Contest. Wishing you all a wonderful event and World Wildlife Day.
Hi, my name's Kira Chang, and I'm from Virginia in the United States. I've been drawing and painting for fun since I was 6, and I've always had an affinity for drawing animals, especially my dog. After school, I study for the test. Then I go to the gym and cook when I get home. After, I spend some time with my dog, of course, before going to dance or piano class to prep for comp season. When I can, I work on my shelter project to encourage the adoption of long-stay animals. In my free time, I hang out with my friends or go outside and walk. Through IFAW, I have the privilege to use my passion to serve a greater purpose, calling attention to the plight of endangered species across the globe. My painting portrays an owl witnessing the deforestation of its habitat, helpless to stop it. I'm incredibly honored to receive this award and participate in IFAW's mission.
With our deep thanks to the CITES Secretariat and the UNDP for helping provide these young artists with this platform to share their talents and their passion for the wildlife and the natural world. And please join me one more time to congratulate Kira and all of our finalists for their truly inspiring work. Thank you.
Really warm thanks to Mr. Downs, to you, Matt, and to Kelly Johnston, who have done such an incredible job facilitating this annual World Wildlife Day tradition. It is really a hard job. They are so talented. You can't imagine how many of these paintings we see, and we have to help in the selection of the finalists, and it gets more and more difficult each year. But really, congratulations to Savin, Levy, Bethel, and Kara for winning this year's contest. Now, it is now my pleasure for another item that is always part of our agenda for World Wildlife Day in the last years is the Jackson Wild 2025 Film Showcase. It's now my pleasure to introduce our final World Wildlife Day tradition, the Jackson Wild World Wildlife Day Film Showcase. Each year, the showcase invites storytellers around the globe to enter films that raise awareness on the theme of the year. In our next video, we will hear from Ms. Christy Quinn, Jackson Wild Interim Executive Director.
Thank you, Yvonne, and everyone participating in today's inspiring event. I'm truly honored to be joining virtually. For over 30 years, Jackson Wild has united filmmakers, scientists, conservationists, and policymakers, harnessing the power of storytelling to drive meaningful action for our planet. As we celebrate today, I'm thrilled to highlight our ongoing collaboration with the United Nations and CITES, the 2025 World Wildlife Day Film Showcase. At Jackson Wild, we believe that storytelling is a powerful driver for investment in conservation. These films not only amplify the voices of those on the front lines protecting our planet, but serve as a catalyst for funding solutions that safeguard our natural world. Without storytelling, conservation efforts around the world risk going unseen, and the opportunity to inspire meaningful change could be lost. That's why the 2025 World Wildlife Day Film Showcase is more important than ever. This year, we're spotlighting stories that explore innovative wildlife conservation finance solutions that benefit both people and the planet. The films announced today will live online for the rest of the year, available for free educational screenings across the world, ensuring their message reaches classrooms, communities, and decision makers everywhere. Without further ado, let's dive into this year's selections.
This project worked for us because it met a number of objectives. The parcel connects to multiple pieces of already preserved land, and this organization had so much to offer in the way of expanding access to the outdoors. And in this case, they can care for it in a way that we can't and that others can't because they live there and they love it.
It was automatic. It was a blessed symbiotic relationship.
That was when the penny dropped, that I was dependent and we're dependent on the thing that we're choosing to destroy right now. And dependent for our health, but also dependent for our economy and our climate.
Our connection to nature really shapes how we protect it.
And the solutions are here. People restoring and harnessing the power of nature in our food and soil, rivers, coastlines, and cities.
By having this amazing animal here, actually my home is better protected, I am better protected.
I started to actually imagine what it might look like if we really reconnected with nature and got behind these types of solutions in a much bigger way.
สิ่งที่ทิพย์ทำบางครั้งถ้าไปบอกเล่าเฉยๆเขาก็ไม่เชื่อแต่เหมือนคนที่เขาแวะเวียนมาเยี่ยมอะไรแบบเนี้ยเขาจะถ้าพอเขาแค่มามองต้นพันธุ์ต้นไม้นะถ้าเขาเปิดใจที่จะมองทีนี้ก็เกิดการเรียนรู้แบบเป็นการเรียนรู้แบบธรรมชาติ
So we developed a law in the state of California that identified what's called a carbon offset as a means by which people who have to emit CO2 can mitigate that to zero by absorbing CO2. So it's a part of the climate solution, and it pays landowners to hold trees and grow a bigger, older, more natural forest.
Conseguimos coletar alguns morcegos que foram Trianops afra, morcego insectívoro, laranjinha, muito bonito, e também morcego de fruta, o Rosetus aegyptiacus. E também coletei outro morcego insectívoro, que é uma Macronixorus pictatus. O trabalho dos cientistas é fazer levantamento das espécies que lá existem, ter conhecimento da biologia das espécies que lá estão e recomendar as melhores formas de extração deste novo recurso.
Know that these bears are worth saving. You know, just think of the opportunities that having these bears here has provided to Churchill. We've been through some rough times in the last decade with rail lines getting washed out and just all the COVID, different challenges. But the thing that has always been here for us are the bears.
Tourism is critical to Churchill's operation. Without tourism, I don't know what would happen in this town. It's, you know, the main stimulation of our economy.
This is the start. This is kind of an epic moment for this project where basically a forest with, you know, more than 300,000 trees is going to grow up over the next several years. So it'll be amazing to just watch how it all plays out, just watch it grow up, see the biodiversity. And what we hope to learn is what's the best way to do this? Because amazingly, it's really not well known at all.
A very unusual non-human person taught me about biodiversity. She showed me the web of life that threads through the great African sea forest. I came to know everything is tied to everything else. If Mother Nature was in the world's boardroom, what would she say?
So many thanks to Ms. Quinn, Ms. Scarlett Brown, and the Jackson Wild team for hosting a fantastic 2025 showcase as usual. And congratulations to the selected filmmakers, and I really urge you to take a look at these films. They're always incredibly exciting and heartwarming. I think my staff would be able to help you how to get to download them. I think there's usually a QR code that we can use or something, but anyway, contact us and we can help you find the way to see these this year's showcase online for free. As we draw this year's World Wildlife Day high-level event to a close, I would like to once again thank the distinguished delegates of member states, partners, experts, students, and participants, both here and online. It's great to see such a large group of people. Thanks also to the interpreters and technicians for lending your expertise today. And really warm thanks always to our partners when we're organizing World Wildlife Day, who are always helping us. UNDP, the fantastic team of the Geneva Environment Network, IFAW, Jackson Wild, Wild Labs in Switzerland. Wildlands in Switzerland, to our great panelists, the CITES Global Youth Network, and certainly, last but not least, our poster contest winner who designed the official poster this year, Mr. Marc Petrelis. We invite you all to join us this afternoon at 3 p.m. at the Biopark Geneva for a special guided visit and activities to support the species of the biopark, including Janus, the two-headed tortoise. I know you're all going to come to see the two-headed tortoise, but there's a lot of other things to see at Biopark. I now have the privilege of welcoming the head of Species Conservation and International Trade at the Switzerland Federal Food Safety and Veterinary Office, Mr. Jacob Eckenberger, to give closing remarks. Mr. Eckenberger, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. As we come to the end of this significant gathering, I would like to express my gratitude for the opportunity to speak before such a distinguished group of leaders, experts, and advocates for wildlife conservation. Today, we have discussed critical issues at the heart of global and local efforts to protect the environment, and together we have underscored the necessity of investing in both people and planet. The theme of this year's observance, Wildlife Conservation Finance, Investing in People and Planet, resonates deeply with Switzerland's long-standing commitment in both environmental sustainability and global cooperation. We know that wildlife conservation is not just about protecting endangered species or preserving biodiversity. It is about safeguarding the delicate balance of life that sustains all people. The health of our planet is intrinsically linked to the prosperity and well-being of societies across the globe. And for this reason, we must approach wildlife conservation as an investment, not an expense. Switzerland has long been a proponent of aligning financial flows with sustainability goals. We have supported initiatives that promote responsible investment in both the natural environment and the people who rely on it. From our efforts to integrate environmental considerations into economic policies to our commitment to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we have consistently emphasized that sustainable finance is key to addressing global challenges. However, we must be clear that the conversation around financing conservation cannot be limited to monetary resources alone. The true power of our investments lies in ensuring that they empower local communities, those who live in close connection with our planet's most vulnerable ecosystems. The people who protect these landscapes are often the most marginalized, yet they hold the knowledge, resilience, and ingenuity necessary to safeguard the future of wildlife and their habitats. Switzerland acknowledges that alongside financial investments in wildlife conservation, it is crucial to also consider the needs and well-beings of the communities that play an essential role in protecting these ecosystems. As we seek innovative solutions for sustainable finance, let us not forget that the strength of our conservation efforts is rooted in inclusivity, partnership, and respect for the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities. And as we reflect on these challenges, we must also recognize the role of the next generation. The youth of today are already leading with passion and innovation, demanding that we act decisively to protect our planet's future. They are the change makers who will inherit the world we leave behind. And it is critical that we support their efforts by providing them with the tools, education, and platforms they need to become the leaders of tomorrow's conservation efforts. Together, we must create a global framework where financial mechanisms are designed not only to protect our planet's biodiversity, but also to ensure that the benefits of conservation reach the people who depend on these resources for their livelihoods. It is only through such integrated efforts that we can achieve a future where both our natural world and humanity thrive in harmony. As we move forward, let us keep in mind that our investments today will determine the world we leave for tomorrow. Let us invest in a future where wildlife conservation is not a mere aspiration, but a tangible reality for all. Thank you.
Thank you. He also has to say something else, the surprise that we have waiting for you. But thank you, Mr. Eggenberg, for those inspirational words. And you're absolutely right. We have to think about the future and our future generations to come, and indigenous and local communities, and work at the local level as well. I want to just be able to say before you invite us to the surprise is to thank my team who has been working night and day to be able to organize this World Wildlife Day. It involves a lot of work. So please, if I can have my team stand up and we can recognize your efforts. Thank you. And again, to all the partners who helped us, particularly the Geneva Environment Network, to set this up and get you all here. Mr. Eggenberger, now the surprise.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. I would like to invite you all to a reception where we can continue our discussions and strengthen the partnerships we have fostered here today. I look forward to joining you and furthering our shared commitment to wildlife conservation. I think it will be right out here.
Outside. Thank you.
Thank you very much.